Yeah. Hey, welcome to Coffee Compiler Club. Here today to talk about anything and everything to do with compilers and language runtimes and module systems. And I don't know, we have a no big small chat talking about funny stuff up front. Um, I don't typically have a set agenda. I have a very mild one right now. If anyone wants to talk about something else, you're more than welcome to bring it up. My thing is, let me throw up Cliff Notes, and then I just want to talk about a module system for simple. Um, I have some constraints and I have some ideas. And I was like, does anyone know or care or think this is stupid or something or not? What am I doing here? That's fine.
Can you solve it by
So,
just calling eval?
I'm sorry?
I said, can you solve it by just calling eval?
Exactly. Um, I was going to say no. This is for like ahead of time compilation, and you could do on the fly with eval, and I think that would not make any change. Shouldn't, maybe in theory, I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. So one of my goals here is like no syntax for a one file. I just want to get started. I wrote some code and I run it. But then I want to have some place to put other symbols that I can go hunt for and break out like standard lib things because those always get special treatment by every compiler, and they'll get special treatment here too. And mostly they'll have some search path that's where you've hidden all the special symbols, like how to do printf.
What if they
Um,
don't?
um, when I compile the C standard library, I don't have the C standard library to compile it with. So when I compile without the standard library, I have to know that, and that's how I compile the standard library itself. And that would be simply, I'll do a search and I won't find anything. And then the question now is whether I just report, I can't find my standard library, or do I just go ahead and compile and you said printf, but I can't find that symbol. So I get a, missing undefined symbol error.
The question
Um,
doesn't quite make sense.
Say again?
That question doesn't quite make sense because you could rewrite it in a more general form and say, when I compile module X, it doesn't have module X available to compile against. And it's like, okay, fine. So when I compile the standard library, it doesn't rely on the standard library, like
Yeah,
as an external module, right?
right.
And
I mean,
whatever it's
that's
compiling, those
Yeah,
symbols,
I
it
understood
defines
it as an
itself.
ergonomics question. The standard library is a thing that I just sort of want to assume has always been imported before the first line of any script that I run.
Well, you
uh,
can also just have a thing where you don't, where you don't assume that the standard libraries.
right. So I'm assuming that you don't write anything to pull in standard. You don't say pound include studio.h. You don't say anything about it. You just go write some code. So you have a hello.simple file. It's got in it a simple sys.io.print. This is the file contents versus the file name here, hello world, right? Okay, where did that come from? So the compiler starts with, and then you compile it. So this is the file name. Let's hold it up. Okay, so file is this. So there's a compile in the world somewhere that says simple, and then I say hello.smp. That's my file I'm compiling. And he secretly inside simple he has some install path to the standard lib and looks for it.
So
Meanwhile,
question
if I'm
number one,
compiling
Cliff.
standard lib somewhere else in the world, I have a sys.smp, and then the file contents look like, let's see here, something that says, I'm not actually going to probably have the struct sys, and then in here there's a struct io, and it has some other stuff, but inside here somewhere he's got value P is a function that takes a string and returns
Yeah.
me a void and has a body contents which actually looks like call outs too.
So Cliff,
the libc write.
Go up in that example above the line that says struct sys and insert a new blank line.
Yeah.
Can you type here sys.io.p hello?
Oh, here, this guy in the same file will do a forward reference lookup and say yes.
Good.
You'll hit on the
So
sys in this file because he'll say within a file, all things are that are declared at the top level can be visited in any order.
so within a compilation unit, for whatever that definition is,
That's right.
you have forward reference
Yeah,
evaluation.
within
Yeah,
a
good.
compilation unit.
Resolution. Yep. And your compilation unit in simple is how large?
It's whatever you have in your file.
Just a single file.
Yeah, yeah. So
Do you
like
have
the goal of a module system is to say I have a bunch of different files that don't necessarily have to be compiled all together. They may have to be in order to get, if something in one file demands something from another file, and I can find that other file, but it's out of date. This is like the Java make system. He'll find it and compile it.
right? I mean, so if it's up to the level of Java, you're pretty good with respect to that. In that Java within a directory structure will find the other things within that.
Yes. So this is the starting point. Up above, I've mentioned, hey, I have this directory notion, or I expect you to have a project root. If you don't tell me, I'll assume it's the current working directory.
Yeah.
If you tell me the project root, I'll use that, however you got there. You have
So
a file, you have a series of directory paths down to a file. So as
so
soon as
let's
I have a
assume
series of
that you
directory
have
paths, that's your qualified name, ABC, in this
there you go.
code I've highlighted here. This is all me throwing out something in 5 minutes or less.
So let's
Um,
assume that you have a library called core. Just to simplify this, so you call it
I have a library
sys
called what?
sys, I guess, in this case.
Yeah, it's sys. Yeah.
Sys. Okay. So all you have to do is that the compiler knows whenever you compile that there's a namespace called sys that imports that library.
Yeah.
And that works even when you're compiling sys
Um, w w-
because sys is sys.
yeah. So right. So he does right. So the import logic is I look for a symbol. I don't find it. It's an undefined forward reference. Now I'm going to hunt in the user's provided project, and if that
Yeah.
fails, the complete list of projects, including at the last, the built-in project would be sys. So
Because we
you could
have,
add more things on your compile line that says I have well, at the moment I don't have any thought on that one at all, but this one is I have a project root. Optionally, it's self, whatever your path is here. And internally it will be I'm going to hunt here and then I'm going to hunt sys, but I can imagine having other paths to other projects. So in
I know
particular,
ergonomics is always contentious, but I tend to
uh,
find default file layout structures more ergonomic than having to populate a class path.
exactly. So I want the default to be current working directory, but if you have a directory that's got an A nested B nested C, and you're firing off the compiler at the root, and you say, at the root here, I'm just going to call simple, but I want to compile a.b.c.simple, that would be the fully qualified path to the ABC file, and that would give you, the symbols that look like a.b.c.
But
Dot whatever it
the
is.
question now,
Uh,
if you start from the that is three directories down, should the compiler see a dot c dot z dot something if there are more directories here, or the scope of the compile will be only the last directory, the B directory here.
so someone has to declare, I can't look from inside the C directory and declare I know what the project root is.
Hmm.
So somebody has to tell me what the project root is.
So the root should be here, should be the first
No,
directory.
no,
So that
no, the project root is the current working directory unless you say
okay,
something. If you put on the
okay.
command line, hey, the project root is here, there it is. Otherwise,
Mhm.
it's the current directory, which has an A and a B. So the directory structure
Yeah,
here,
yeah, yeah.
this says I have some other files in here, foo.txt, I don't care, whatever my directories has in here, and it might have a top.simple, but it has an A. And
Mhm,
then inside the A, there may be an A.simple or not, but inside
mhm,
here, there's a B.
mhm.
And inside here, there's a C
Yeah.
or not. Here would be the C.simple. So
Mhm.
this should say in the current directory, it's A.B.C, and then that's the C file, and it has my stuff in it.
So we did that
Okay, but
originally and then
the
we
question,
flipped it.
Two
yeah,
people
So
talking.
go ahead, Cam.
yeah, so what you wrote there, Cliff, we did that originally and it sucked. So what we did is we moved a.smp up one level.
Yeah, I know
So
you did. Why did it suck?
it just did. I mean, we used it. It because a.simple isn't contained within a. A.simple defines a.
I see. So
Yes,
you're
exactly.
thinking, and I totally saw you do this, and I thought it was a good idea, and I was trying to sort myself out here.
Right.
And this one
So
is
b.smp would be optional because
right.
that's basically defining a package or a container. So the container may have its own definitions, or it may just imply nesting. So so at the top,
Yeah, fair.
the A is for us is the module, and so we can actually do what Tidor was talking about and walk up and find the module and know where to compile automatically.
How
But
did
Um,
that change
because
your
we have the
import
module
statements?
keyword, you're allergic to keywords, so you don't have quite the same
well, I don't want to
ease
have
of.
an import either.
Oh, I'm not talking imports. So
Okay.
we treat A and everything under it as the module.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So our module can be spread out across one file or 100 files.
Right, right,
Mm.
right. You know, that would be what you'd expect out of a module.
Right.
Um, you're talking about a module separate from a project.
Well, we don't have the term project,
Okay.
so that
So
term doesn't exist. A
here's
module for
something
us is a
to
library, but a library can be small or huge.
Oh crap. All right, hang on. I gotta take this. I owe this guy a call. Hey, hey, you guys keep talking. I'm gonna be back in just a second. Sorry, I'm running my
well,
meetings.
I
Um,
do
Got to
have an
teach Cliff to
opinion
put the
on
mirror
this.
on when he takes a
I should have
call.
called
Yeah.
you. You want to
What
go
was that,
eat out
Ryan?
today?
Is that Ryan?
Okay, I can't hear because of the. Okay, that's better. Yeah. So I have one opinion on this.
Okay.
I think that like having your modules
So
use the
this one's
directory
the
structure
Linux.
is actually kind of bad, and the
Why don't we
reason
go
why
cffi
is
shortly?
that
Let's say one.
different file systems
Um,
allow different directory
okay,
names.
okay, and then I'll go figure out what I'm doing after that. Okay, that works.
Say it again.
Like different
Mm.
file systems
Yeah.
allow different
All right,
directory
sounds good.
names or like
But usually
lengths of
still
Just
directory
text me
go
if
names.
you
over
want
strict.
to.
Say it has to meet the
All
token
right.
rules for your language.
Yeah, 'cause I'm only like
Yeah.
10 minutes away.
So
Yeah,
So
okay.
it's true, Ryan, but I've never actually hit that in reality because, the last 8.3 I used was in the early 90s. So, name lengths haven't been a limiting factor for at least 25 years.
The
Where
only
did
Cliff,
name
story I
lengths come
really
from?
remember about the file system naming things causing a lot of problems was that when Windows was designing Hyper-V, you got all kinds of weird bugs when you named your file systems with characters that were non-alphabetic.
So Windows names are not Unicode.
They are
UTF.
Unicode UTF-16, but yeah,
they're
that's
not
still
Unicode.
Unicode.
They're not
They're not.
Unicode.
Hang
They
on, yell at
use
Cameron.
Unicode numbering, but they allow illegal Unicode values. So, for example, they allow half of a Unicode extension pair, which is illegal, but Windows is perfectly happy with it. I I always get messed up when I try to remember which name it is, but I think it's called WTF 16 or no,
Well,
I'm not joking. Like look it up. There's something called WTF 16. It's one of those. There's this kind of half conformance standard that Microsoft uses, and someone made fun of it. I think they called it WTF 16. not
So I
Yeah.
would
Microsoft.
be all happy to claim that uh, the names I'm going to use, I will disallow names that aren't hitting the ASCII standard, UTF-8 standard, something. And then if you name your directory that, it'll fail to do the lookup, so it won't find it.
So, so one thing that I did with the design of my compiler is I said, you know what, I want to have this concept of a source bundle. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have this concept and say this is the input to the compiler is that, like, in theory, your source bundle could come from the file system, but if you're on a file system that like has, only supports 8 character directory names or something, you could have the source bundle come from a file that's like a tar.gz file, and then it would kind of like behave all the same. So
Hmm.
where you have this idea of like a packed up grouping, which could be either a file or it could come from a directory and
I,
then like get
I want to
transponded to
have
whatever.
Yes, for deployment reasons, it is very convenient that the Python VM can be started either with a file system or with a zip.
But a zip is a file system, so that's
It's
a
not,
a zip is a file system. It's just it's artificial, but there's nothing inherent about an OS file system being different from a zip. They're just
well,
different
the
ways
ability
of
to
taking
write
a
Yeah,
byte
the
are.
array and
thing that we
pretending it's a
found
file system.
operationally useful about that was that we could deploy by copying the new zip in place and then renaming it over. So we got a nice atomic file system rename as the moment when all the source code changed. So you never got a torn write on replacing a Python application,
Ah,
which is nice.
Yeah.
yeah, okay. I was looking for the ability to support separate compilation. Like if you have all the source all at once, then it hardly matters. You're going to compile it all at once too.
you can still
Instead, it's
cache even if you have that, because like you can have a like SQLite database and say, okay, here's the hash of this the last time I compiled it. You have your new source bundle, right? And you're still gonna open it and then hash the contents, and then you can
Isn't
say,
that the
oh,
it,
unison
it,
language or
it,
something? Isn't
Yeah,
it-
there a language built
yeah,
into that concept?
yeah, bingo.
I mean, I'm trying to avoid having to require you to have the entire 100 megabytes of source bundle all at once.
Mm.
I guess my question is your hope that these .o files are themselves a distribution format? Or is your assumption that people
Yeah,
distribute source code and then ahead of
no,
time
no,
compile,
they
which is
would be a
different than we
distribution
actually
format.
have an ABI that has to be maintained over time?
They would be a distribution format. They would have a standard compilation and a section in the .o file for holding the compressed type info that would be the import that you get out of a Java class file.
see, I don't like that because not, like what is the .o format? Is it like ELF? Is it like
Yeah, it's ELF.
Mock-O? Is it COM?
No, no, it's ELF, and
So
you
you don't
can link against it with a non-simple project.
Are you so if it's ELF, then what are you doing on Windows and Mac OS? Because Windows uses COM format and then Mac OS uses Mach-O. So
Near as I can tell, I can get ELF on all of them to work. I certainly link with ELF files on Windows. They may also support COM. They may default to COM. I've not had any trouble linking ELF.
does the Windows compiler? I thought only can you like well, technically it's not Windows itself, it's the Microsoft Visual Studio compiler, whatever that
Yeah, I
uses
don't know
COM.
about Visual Studio. I sit down with GCC on
Yeah.
Windows and I don't have any troubles.
Yeah,
So
GCC on Windows I think uses ELF as the intermediate format, but the EXEs come out as COM format once the linking
yeah,
is
no, once
done.
you've gone to an exe, you drop all the symbol stuff, the extra structs, and you're an exe. This would
Right.
be I'm a .o expecting to be linked yet again, and I include more info in the .o file.
But
But if
I
I go
think
ask Windows, I bet you he'll say that he also does. Uh,
I
he'll link Windows linking ELF files.
I thought it used COM as I don't know 100%, but I thought it used COM as the intermediate format as well when you're using it MSVC instead of GCC specifically. Um,
Yeah, okay. So the discussion from AI says go use Sigwin, which I do a lot of, um, and
y-
GCC.
yeah,
So
obviously if you use that, you can link Mako, but that or sorry Yelf, but that's not the default compiler on Windows. So like if you wanted to integrate that with like a standard Windows project, it wouldn't work.
okay, so that's good to know. I'd have to go sort on that. For me, it was just there's a large, well understood distribution format for .o files with a large, well understood linking format that goes with it, building EXEs, building archives and libraries. Put the header files
Yeah.
there.
My question is, how well does that fit with the simple philosophy of do things in simple ways that are useful as a teaching tool? I don't know how useful ELF is as a teaching tool, and if there is a really simple subset of things that ELF does that
well,
you can write
right.
a
So
teaching
I'm not trying
linker
to teach
for.
ELF. I'm just trying to say you don't have to compile your program all at once. And where do you get your header files from? And can I write my source code such that its place in a directory tree defines how I find its header files amongst the different files within it?
Using Elf on like Mac and Windows seems like it would work as long as you only kind of use simple. But if you try and like
Well, I
if
use
you try
GCC on Windows all the time
but
for
like
other unrelated things altogether.
if if you try and like mix binaries between the Windows like because GCC on Windows uses a different ABI from like the Microsoft compiler as
Yeah, yeah.
well, so you can't
If you're
use
Yeah.
the
mixing from the different compilers, you have to throw the flags in that say we agree on the ABI. And if you're
but
just building whatever gzip from source on Windows using GCC, it's all fine.
so I guess the question is, do you want this to be able to mix with binaries built in other languages, or do you want to like take over the whole compilation process and say,
No,
okay,
so
you have to
anytime
only
you
use
want to
simple?
mix binaries, there has to be an agreement of ABIs. And simple itself is ABI agnostic. I just take a command line flag that defaults on different OSs as to what the ABI is. Now, a thing I would find useful would be a way to have anybody's generic linker look in the ELF file or the COM or whatever and find the version of the compiled code that has the correct matching ABI. So I don't know what people call these things. I know they're around there like fat binaries or something.
Yeah,
And
Windows has multiple ABIs as well. Even like Microsoft, like for
yeah,
example, there's a different ABI between Visual Studio 17 and 20, I think.
sure.
For like they have this symbol thing called like debug something, and it's like debug iterators. So for example, if you're in C++, like vectors or like iterators, normally like they're raw pointers, right? For
Yeah,
efficiency reasons. But you flip this switch on in Microsoft, right? And it turns them into like error checked. They've got all these extra fields that keep track of your allocations. And
right,
so completely different binary structure, completely different ABI, but it's doing all this error checking and like throwing
right.
exceptions if you do something
So
illegal.
what you just said was Windows already supports multiple ABIs with various flags to pick between them. Like from context of what I want to do with simple, it would be nice, but it's not crucial that it interop with Microsoft Windows Visual Studio code. But the interop path seems available via some command line flag options on what your ABI is.
Yeah. And so are you good? Is the default going to be okay? This runs on, can link with Cygwin GCC or is on Windows, or is it going to be like the default is, Visual Studio?
I think the default will be GCC, Cygwin, and or Linux, and or some variation on Mac OS. I've been looking at the Mac OS thing. I think that one won't be too hard to figure out how to link against.
And I think GCC on macOS also produces Mach-O, if I recall.
I'll have to go look and see what's going on there. So,
Yeah,
so
I
this,
had issues with my compiler when I tried to get Mac to work. I think TCC does dwarf no matter what OS, and I couldn't not link like Mac binaries with TCC like objects. So yeah, Mako. I'm pretty sure it's Mako, and yeah.
okay, so there was an earlier question, am I planning to take over the entire compilation process? Um, I think for ease of having it to work for people who want a tutorial and just get started kind of things, it should link by default against itself freely on whatever platform. But if you want to link against native binaries on that platform, then at some point you're going to have to talk to a linker, or I'm going to take over being the linker. And I haven't decided I wanted to be a linker yet, right? And then if I take over being the linker, then I'll just go figure out what the ABI they're using and what ABI I have, and I'll cross patch between them and make it work.
Why
Um,
not just generate C code and just transpile it?
Yeah, right. But then I have to have a C compiler, which I'm not requiring you to have a C compiler right now.
Well, you
So I
It's
kind
don't
not
know
the
of
end
whether
of the
you
world.
should or shouldn't go down.
Sorry, it's
Sorry.
actually, I'll have to think about that. It's not a terrible idea. Like if I'm intending that I'm going to cross compile to somebody else, I'll hand you a C guy and say link it with the following ABI. Compile link to the following ABI, and then it'll link against me, and we're good.
chances are they're going to have at least a C compiler if they're mixing
If they're
languages.
mixing between languages, they'll have a C compiler. Right. They're coming from Python, they won't.
Or they'll
Especially
pretend
C89.
to. I've seen Rust link against other Rust using cffi because that's the lingua franca.
CFFI? What is
You
CFFI? I should know this word.
you want to do foreign function invocation,
Yeah.
but Rust doesn't have a stable ABI.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you need to make a DLL in Rust and then link to it from an application written in Rust, you have to decide what the ABI is that you're using for that. So they tend to use C's foreign function invocation because it's a standard.
Ah. But C, but that still has different
I
layouts
wouldn't say
according
that
to
C has an ABI. Even GCC and Linux on Linux has slightly different ABIs from Clang in some cases. Like they would disagree on like whether a 128-bit int
yeah,
would be passed in like
right.
XMM0 or something. I
Right.
can't
Yeah,
remember the
there's things
details,
there.
but
I have this advantage is that I can say I don't need to support weird data types, so the ABI for passing those weird data types won't actually happen. So you say weird, but pick 128. I don't know if that's weird or not. But there are things like I want to pass half of a struct in registers and half of a struct in the caller's stack space kind of things. And I'm like, well, I can just say no to that.
yeah, the C ABI is an illusion. There were some good articles about that.
Oh,
So how are you defining the border of a module?
by the directory.
So if I point the compiler at one file that is in a module, is it
Yeah.
just going to say that's not a module, please point me at a directory, not a file?
Well,
Or
right.
is it going to walk up some file hierarchy until it
Right,
finds the module file and say, okay, I walked up, this is the module, this is my
right.
unit of compilation, I'm going to call that whole unit of compilation. Then I'm going to start the binary and call the function you told me to call.
Okay, so what I started this with is somebody tells me where the project root is. And Cameron's take is I'll go uphill looking for project root files and open them up and peek inside and see that they declare a project root or a module root. And if they're not done, they'll keep going up until he finds, and you must then have, I think, a file at the top level that defines your project. And he peeks in them until he finds one. And he says, okay, I know where the project root is. And I come at it from a little different direction. I'm saying at the time I invoke the compiler, tell me the project root. Now, a default is the current directory.
So, and I'll add that our unit of compilation is a module, not a file. So there is that difference. So you do have a different goal as well. So
Yeah,
it's
I
not
want to
entirely
compile. I want to be able to compile a file out of a nested series of modules. That one file may depend on things from other files that are out of date or timestamped differently or not yet been compiled ever. Somebody just did a clean and wiped the precompiles out. That so I then compile C from A.B.C. Well, that demands A get compiled and B or whatever. I mean, there'll be some forced precompiles that'll happen. So you'll get the whole necessary pile of things that you need for C also compiled. Once they're compiled, they're now basically cached as the .o files. Does that make sense, Aaron? Like, tell me the project root.
It makes sense as a constraint, but I think there is advantages to having a way to simply look at the file system and know where the project root is without having to look at the invocation of the compiler to learn that.
I hear you. So
A lot of the
the
language I've seen have a, dot mod or file or dot project file or something that,
yeah, I want to have a starting point that says I I don't need anything. I don't need an extra file to begin with. I want to compile Hello World all by itself. That's the tutorial
yeah.
starting. Write some code,
So if
run
I
it.
have just like dot slash simple space file name, you wanted to try and compile that file
Yeah,
and run it.
yeah.
If I
Right.
say dot slash simple enter, I wanted to say, well, what directory am I in? Is there a module? Let me go find the place where I can actually compile from and just work.
I'm sorry. You said dot slash simple impl simple enter is what I heard.
Enter. Yeah, no parameters. If I invoke the compiler and pass
Ah,
it nothing,
I
except
see.
that I'm on a working directory somewhere,
Right.
it should go figure out what project it's in the middle of a folder of and compile that thing.
Okay. So you have to not accidentally discover some project that you're nested inside of if you invoke the compiler in this mode.
Yes, you have a project.json and you add an extra comma at the end of a list. So now it's not valid JSON and suddenly you're compiling one up.
Yeah. Yeah. So that right. Okay. I'm thinking you're going to tell me what file to compile. That's what I'm compiling, plus his dependents. And then I said plus dependents. Well, that's not the file. That's his file plus more. And now you're
Right,
like,
plus
well, as soon as
dependence
you say
means
you're going to find
discover the module.
more, yeah, just go find the project root and go compile the project root. And you can't do partial projects. You have to do the whole project. I guess if
Right.
you put a file on the path on there on the compile line, he'll do just the minimum for that. And if you don't say anything, he looks for a project root. But now you have to have something in the directories that say this is a root. And if I don't, and I go all the way up the top and I don't find it, I miss, so I can't find it. But the other one is you said simple accidentally, and I went up too far and found
If you
the
examine
wrong
the
root.
source, does it give you any indication that it's a project root?
Oh, you're so hard to hear, Cameron.
I said, if you examine the source code, is there any indication that it's the project root?
Well, that was the thing. I didn't want to be hunting through the source also. So I was also claiming I don't put in the source right now. Do not put in something that indicates project root. The file itself tells me something about project roots, or the compile does with the flags.
So
Yeah, my
just if
instinct
you
is to have the
guys,
presence of a deps file tell you this is the root of a module because it told me what its dependencies were.
Right, right. So there was
But
this
that
thought.
requires you to have a separate deps file as a concept.
And Ben, I heard you want to say something. So there is this version that says simple.project.root is a file that has to exist, and it could be empty even. And I'll hunt up, and if I don't find this, you don't have a project root, and I'm doing the current directory as the project root, and you're a one file simple
Right.
starter.
It could be empty. It could say just
Yeah,
include the standard library. Say include the
yeah.
standard library and include this folder that's over there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you could do here, and the simplest one is to say it doesn't. Ah, that's
That's probably
interesting.
also the file where you're putting things like the hashes of versions of things that have been imported or whatever.
Right. So the next step here is I'm moving the make knowledge of where everything is that gets built out of the make file. I say make file, but if I can put Gradle and CMake and whatever you want there, and moving it into the directory itself. So the directory contains something like a well understood, specified, here's external things I'm going to link against. They'll be their own projects, and I'll go find them. Yeah, so I never liked the locks. I never needed them yet. I'm dodging, but they might come around. That one is the list of. Well, I put that under depths. Yeah, right. Hash of the depths, right. And so that one is not something. It's a file that the user doesn't write that's in the current directory. And for me, I'm putting those in a build and not as a top level file here. I'm going to claim that I'm going to put your build artifact somewhere. So if you don't tell me otherwise, I'll just put them here, and it's a mirror. So it's a mirror of the source, but with .o files. And then those are standard L files can be linked against, but also they contain this extra bit. And I would put the lock in there because that's a hash of depths. So I would somewhere in there I would say I've also got a sys.io that I need, and I mirrored it. Now, why do I care for the hash of them? Why am I not just looking again each time? What was the purpose of having a hash of the depths?
To not revisit, to not keep revisiting the same thing.
Well, I needed the source. If I start a compile from scratch, I get a new process.
Hmm.
I need to import the symbols.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the symbols, yeah, so I'm not talking about anything internet here.
Okay.
Um,
How do you import? You don't want, so do you want to import the symbols somehow or not?
yeah,
Do
I have to import symbols. So compiling hello world, he says sys. So what's sys? Where'd that name come from? Okay, he goes to some place that's not the current directory, obviously, and then he finds a directory called sys or
Mm,
yeah, sys.o somewhere. He has a search path. He finds a sys.o. He opens it up. He does the elf lookup thing, which is pretty quick to go find the
mm-hmm.
symbol table, and
Yeah.
he imports the
Yeah.
symbol table as a WAD a disk and
Hmm.
deserializes it,
Yeah.
and he
Call
gets
this
the list of
concept
symbols.
a repository. So basically, when you have a name and you don't want to think about is it in a zip file or a targz file or on the
Yeah,
internet or in a local directory, all those hierarchical representatives, including being able to combine multiple of the paths, they are all represented as a repository. So you just say, hey, repository, give me sys, and it does.
right, right.
And that way you can, optimize for the simple local case, but you can also eventually add support for,
But
hey, I'm
someone
on a
starts
plane
by
over the
saying,
Pacific. Please slow me down by going to, Maven Central or some bullshit. I'm sorry, some crap like that.
somebody somewhere has the original, here's where the repo is. Like I started this project from scratch. It's clean. I've downloaded the source. I have a million lines of source. I want to go. First thing he says is, "Oh, I need this dependency. I need this repo to go has the whatever has these things. Where is it?" And there's an initial one. So somebody has to say, "This is where I put these things," and
Well,
then you can
but
put a
you
file in
also
the
have
current.
default behavior. So for example, when I do SSH, it knows where I have my, my cached set of certificates or keys or whatever. It's in my home directory under my .ssh directory, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
So I
he
mean,
takes the default
similarly, you
path.
could have a local repository under .simple under your home directory, and inside there, it's got sys dot whatever your compiled form
Yeah.
is.
So one of my pet peeves and grand fails is build systems with hard to reproduce state that they're dependent upon, and then you get wedged because the state's incorrect, and then you're forever pulling the bad thing out. So you wipe it clean and you go from scratch, but the go from scratch has to find everything again. So I'm happy to shove crappy things in the build directory as a local directory in the project space, parallel to the source that has things that are caches of stuff that was hard to get some other way. But I still have to find where to get that other stuff. And then this gets into like, I have a list of external dependencies that I got from Maven or Gradle. That's a different piece of the pie. I wasn't going there yet. That's the JSON doom, and I don't need that much structure. Like the goal here is to say I'm standalone, except if you ask for something from Maven, I did a Maven build thing. It was outside the simple build project, and I put these Maven things here. And now simple can go there and say, oh, here's all this crap from Maven. Okay, fine. But I'm not trying to solve Maven problem inside the simple, which is kind of what Node.js does. In consequences that everyone
I'd
flips
argue it's what most
version
languages
numbers.
do these days is try to solve the dependency management problem.
Yeah, I'm not trying to solve the dependency management problem in simple right now. That is not a goal. That is a non-goal. This is, in theory, some discussion about how to do things and open research problems that the industry is struggling with on the whole are not good things for tutorials. So I'll do something simple, and if you have code that's from outside where you've compiled and outside the default baked in things, you have to provide that yourself. And you do it with Gradle and Maven and whatever your build flavor of joy is. Inside a simple project, I want to have something that says, here's how I find all my internal parts, and I'll find the system one. But if I want to have, and I want to link against something that's outside, then I'll link against it. Then that's just a linking problem. And here's, you're saying, oh, I want to pull in simple code from outside. And that I can take on a command line somewhere or in the project root that says, these things are all found somewhere, but you have to specify where you found them. So no, it still needs an external dependency driver. Like in this project here, I say I'm working on MLIR. I need LLVM as a dependence. Okay, I do. Where did I get it from? So I don't want to have in the simple code, he has go to Maven, download LLVM. Instead, somebody from outside says, when I compile simple, I have a dependency on LLVM, which I put over here, and you'll have to tell me about it every time you invoke the simple compiler. He'll come down to sys dot whatever, a dot b dot c dot blah blah blah. Somebody says, and make me a new LLVM pass. And I'll say, okay, LLVM symbol not found. So somewhere up in the command line, he says, oh, search current directory, but also search this one over here. Where did that directory come from? Well, it came from Maven, who put it on his local cache somewhere, and you tell the compiler that. But I'm not saying you should have source code in the simple directory project top level that said, go to Maven and download this. And that means
Right.
if I want to get it and want to have it, you have to tell it as go outside of the project header, go over there and find it.
Simple has the sys symbol that just is always there, right?
The goal of that one is to minimize the namespace pollution. But
Right.
it's
So
simple
you could
code.
have a symbol inside that symbol that is just sys.depths or
Yeah.
sys.mods.
Yeah. But that
And
means
then if you
yeah.
have a depths file, the first thing that's in the depths file is, okay, what is the symbol that this will appear as inside sys.depths?
Sorry, say that again. I have a
If you
sys.
have some kind of file that says, here's my module and here's all of the things
Yeah.
that I'm essentially including,
Yeah.
you
I,
just make the first column of that a symbol that is a valid symbol in your language. And now you can just stick all those things into your sys symbol. It's just sys.mod dot whatever symbol was in the depths
sys is
file.
a libc. It's a precompiled. You're not editing sys. It's precompiled and stuck off to the side somewhere. You would be expect like I don't normally when I compile C code, I don't normally compile libc. I just suck down libc and live with it. So you'll suck down sys.o and live with it. And the headers will come out of sys.o. So somebody has to find sys.o, and I'll make sure that one's in a default place that the simple compiler can find sys.o. Okay, but the .o file will be the same for everybody everywhere. Never, no changes directly. Now, sys can have things like .import as a function that takes fancy files and does things with it and produces things somehow.
Right. What I'm saying is it doesn't have to be a function. It could just be an object where the symbols in the object are all of the symbols that you
I'm
pulled
saying
in.
sys is invariant for every different user and every different project. You're trying to tell me that sys is different for each user is what I'm hearing.
Or at least the import object is built at compile time for each user
Well, that's
with
But
one
it's
symbol for
contained.
every dependency.
No, it contains inside sys, so
yeah, yeah.
it has to contain sys has to contain import.
So when you get inside your hello world project up there, I can imagine you saying sys.import dot something,
Mhm.
and obviously it'd be a file path would be a good option. Another option would be I gave you a Maven target number or whatever, and that guy produces the symbol name you're looking for. So here is how you would do this, where this is the runtime one with a value you're always talking about. I said var lvm equals sys.import of Maven Central dot 1205 dot lvm or whatever. I do something, oops, and now I get a thing that's available at runtime, and the import guy maybe drives a cache, but he drives a cache that's in your normal project directory, and it's done at runtime.
But
It's not done at compile time.
that's a special function. Instead of using a keyword, you're using a function named import as the same as semantics as the keyword import.
No,
It's
it's no
kind
keyword. It's literally a function,
yeah, but
and
you
it's a
use it.
runtime thing. So which
uh,
means hello.smp won't statically link against LLVM. He will, at runtime, the import will suck up a DLL and export those symbols under the LLVM,
and it's kind of
variable instead of simple.
it's getting trickier now. So if you okay, let's see you do that. But what would you do at compile time with AOVM? You should be able to AOVM dot something, but that dot something is not known.
I
It's
have to
not
do a
known like
lookup at runtime. Yeah.
okay, so that dot something should be resolved. So you have to
I'm
potentially
not claiming this is a good answer. I'm claiming
at
that
least to me it doesn't because you're potentially you have unbound symbols, and if you dot
yeah,
something that it's not there, it's like Python. So Aaron should agree here. So he maybe, but I
I'm not saying this is the good answer. I'm saying I'm hearing Aaron say, go hack sys. And I'm like, no, sys is the same for everybody. It doesn't know that you want to have LLVM versus you want to have gzip versus you want to have what other things, MySQL, whatever your other dependencies are. And I don't think those dependencies belong here in the source code. Only
the
because to do
okay, okay.
so, the compiler has
Right. So
to.
there's two cases. If you're linking a DLL at runtime, you're linking a DLL at runtime. You have to do
Right.
runtime things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But what I'm
That's my
saying is if you
theory
have
here.
separate compilation units, but it's all being built into one static binary.
In the separate compilation case, this will do what you want. There is a separate compilation case. That's the one where you go to the command line on simple and say, oh, some more .o files are over there. A project you have, a separate side projects over there, it has .o files in it.
So at least to me, it boils down the core thing as I see it, we want to import some symbols in order to use it in the rest of the program. That symbol can come from different places, can come from a file, can come from a DLL, can come from a .o file, can come even from another source file. The goal here is to import the symbol so you can use it in the rest of the program.
That
So that
I'm
symbol
very
thing,
carefully distinguishing between simple symbols and
yeah.
external C symbols.
Hmm.
There's a difference.
Okay,
The deal with the
so
simple ones is I'll get the .o file, which will have me all the type info I need,
hmm,
and maybe other things in there as well
yeah.
to do a strong, well-typed, I can export all the symbols, they're freely available for use.
Hmm.
There's another version that says I have externally linked symbols, and that one I have a syntax in the language for it. The sys guy
The
does it all the
external,
time.
the
I
external
declare an
symbol.
external symbol, and I need to
Yeah.
link against it.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
that means at the time that you invoke the linker, hey, wait, I'm invoking a linker, you have to give a path to that symbol name.
Yeah. You
So
have to
what does
give
the
a way to
compiler,
bound the symbols that you promise it to deliver. So you have to supply that.
Yeah, so as an for instance, here, somewhere in the middle of sys, I have a right is declared as a extern C. I don't quite have that, but I give you
Yeah, it,
the
it should be
type
fine.
here.
It should be found from external compiler.
Yeah.
See something. See.
So it's typed as a takes in
Yeah,
file descriptor and
yeah.
it probably takes a string. Uh, uh,
So the trick here is the type info. So you can use
yeah,
the write here without it knowing its implementation.
hang
So
on.
I will equalize that. I will equalize that to the
Okay.
header file.
Here is, I'm just going to dump what I have right now
Do I
in,
now need to have a library type for all the C types so that I can define the interface of that function?
yeah, here is the lib, struct sys has a struct libc,
Mhm.
which defines a bunch of things that end up in quote C quote as this is external.
Yeah.
Here's the signature and then I go link against libc. And literally this works right now.
So I would say that libc is the header file, is the akin to a header file because it has a bunch of things here that you can use without the implementation that will come later.
Yeah,
So this is
this is right. I'm baking the header file knowledge
yeah,
into the .o for sys.
yes.
Sys.o contains a libc struct internally, which contains an error no and contains all the other things.
Yeah.
They're all things that have to be linked.
So that should be akin to the libc dot he dot header. So you somehow will supply all
Yeah,
that knowledge.
this is me giving name bindings to libc. This is
Yes.
my name. This is my bindings to libc right
Yeah.
here.
So you supply the symbols here. They will
Yeah,
be resolved
yeah.
later
This has
from
to be resolved at link time.
yes. Okay.
But it's known to be a call. And so at the time I do the call, I'll know internally I'm going to use the C ABI for that call.
Yeah.
Whatever ABI simple uses from simple to simple, when he calls write, he'll use the libc ABI.
Hmm.
Pass the
I'm
Okay.
still
arguments
trying to
for the FD buff length.
I'm
Fine.
still missing though.
Sorry?
I'm still
What?
missing how the compiler finds this information. Like, I
How the
understand that there's a runtime aspect that.
say again, but the compiler finds these. I'm missing. I couldn't hear you. It's
Is this
literally
identical for a DLL as a statically linked thing?
the say that again. There's no. This is for static linking. I don't care if you DLL it. It's roughly the same. I'll make a call. It has to go through an indirection.
Mm.
But this guy makes a static call, an x86 call op to a hole in the binary with the elf relocation information that says, go find the right symbol from whoever you link against libc. He finds right, he plugs the hole in. That's the
Mm.
standard linker. I produce an elf file that can be linked with the standard linker for
Okay.
the foreign functions.
So let's circle back to modules. So how that so this to me is a module, but this module is like resolvable
Well,
at
okay.
link time.
I'm not treating that as a module.
Hmm.
I'm treating that as just a namespace inside of the sys struct, which is a module. The,
Say that again. So libc, which is a
this is a
module.
namespace.
Okay, fine.
So I could flatten those names out and have them all directly top level at sys, except there'll be hundreds
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
You want a namespace.
That would be sys.libc.len, sys.libc.read,
Yeah, this
sys.libc. Yeah.
sys.libc, well, dot write, dot read, dot
Yeah.
under exit, dot
Okay.
whatever, dot mmap.
Okay. That's the libc structure with providing a namespace, a scope in order
Yes,
to
providing
read.
a scope, right.
Okay. Okay. So the module thing.
Yeah, the module is struct sys. Somewhere when I compile simple, I'll find a sys.o. Peek into that ELF file, pull up the compacted, compressed version of this header, the symbol table,
Mm.
and a serialized version of it, and deserialize it and say, I have a symbol table. It mentions the
Yeah.
following things.
Mhm.
Here's the linking conventions because they're written this equal quote C quote, and I'll make C ABI calls against them and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
And this guy here will be some libc provided int field that I can take the contents of. And so simple code will simply read a slot in memory with an address that's filled in by the linker.
Okay.
So I'm breaking out
Yeah, yeah.
libc is taking a standard FFI name
Mhm.
binding to everybody who's just unknown foreign code.
Mm.
Then there's simple code that's not in the current project or not in the current module. And that one is go find, if you're in the current module, current project, I'll find the project root, I'll find the build directory, I'll find the .os, and I'll import. So I don't have to say in my normal simple code, hey, import blah, blah, blah. Like you do it, the head of every Java file on the planet,
Mhm.
every C file on the planet has a pound include pile of 20 guys.
Mhm.
Import this, pound include that. So that's goal is to get rid of that
Mm.
and
And
just
you know
say,
where to get those things because there's some moral equivalent to the class path in the
yeah,
compiler
yeah,
call.
that's right. There's a moral equivalent to the class path. And the moral equivalent is I
But the
go to the
imports in
build
Java
path.
are not at all the same as the pound includes in C. Not at all. I mean,
No,
basically,
the Java's is an alias.
the imports in Java are just a string to string mapping, where
Um,
so when I say import x.y.z, what I'm really saying is create a map, put a z entry in the map, and its value is x.y.z. And then the compiler is allowed to use that map. Where when I say pound include something, I'm
no,
saying literally,
no. The compiler has to be able to find the class file for that Z guy.
okay, but that's that's still a different thing. So when
He finds
I
it and imports it. He opens that class file. Java C opens those fucking class files. And
not
eats
always,
sorry.
I can guarantee this has not always been true because if you don't use the symbols that you import, it
Yeah, that's true.
never looks for them.
All
At
right, you're
least
right.
in certain
Yeah.
versions of Java, it's just a name to name. It's basically a pound define macro. It says pound define z as x.y.z.
Because I could have used the fully qualified names anywhere I use an
That's
import.
correct.
Yeah, that's
That's
correct.
correct.
Yeah, I knew that. So, but if you use one of those names, however you got it,
The
you will
compiler needs it. Yes,
you'll crack
absolutely
open the class file and read it, which is
correct.
what I'm doing here. If you use a
And it
name,
will compile it if it can. Meaning, if you use x.y.z and it finds a z.java in an xy location
yeah,
in its source path, it's like I'll check the timestamp on that, and if it's out of date, I'll recompile it as part of you
yeah.
compiling
That's
whatever you're
what
compiling.
my intent here is.
Mhm.
It's to
which
be
means
like
no
that.
which means no two modules can have the same name.
There has right, they conflict. There has to be a unique naming somewhere. So in simple, there's the ABC gets you that name, but if you're an external simple module, then there's an ordering of them, and the first one wins. And that's same as Java class path. I have multiple models on the class path. First one wins. You could argue that if I found a second one, I should error you and say I have ambiguous, but there's not a name to them both. I have gzip version 1.7.2 and gzip version 1.7.3 on my class path. Which one did you mean? How do you name them apart? Well, one of them's got a bug here, one of them's got a bug there, so I want them both in my binary, but I want to pick between them carefully. Okay, now you have
Right,
a
so if I
horrible
want
naming
to
problem.
alias them so that instead of having gzip, I have gzip A and gzip B, can
Yeah.
I do that in the JVM?
You can, but you do it by like class loadering things.
So yeah, you can load both two versions of the same library, but you have to load them in two different class loaders,
Yeah, yeah,
and they can't be used non-reflectively within the same context.
yes. Somebody has to say class loader A dot gz gzip and class loader B dot gzip or whatever. Yeah, yeah. So that's not a problem I'm trying to solve here. So
Right.
instead,
Whereas
I'm
one
just
of the
going to say,
advantages
no.
in Python is I can have two Python things that each think they have the same name and just import them separately because I put them in different folders. Like,
Yeah, but you had to put them in different folders, so that's part of your namespace. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yes, that is how I did the namespacing, is to put them in different folders.
right. So in
yeah.
Java, you didn't have to have folders per se, but you had to have class loaders. So I
Yeah.
don't know,
Hmm.
you had to have something to distinguish between them somewhere.
Yeah, that's why I was reaching for the depths file. That's like my first column in the depths file is a symbol that is a valid symbol in my language, and my second column is a place to go get a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and now I'm like, I have the
I would
go.
avoid that at any possible cost. And
Yeah,
it sounds like you like it, but man, having used Node and React and stuff
yeah,
like that,
yeah. I don't
like
like it.
seriously, anything that has a lock file or a dependencies file, I'm instantly suspect of as being just a horrid fucking design. So I mean, it's like waving the Rust flag in front of Levo.
I'll
Okay, back
claim
to
that Cameron
modules.
doesn't like them either. Yes.
Mhm.
You
Back to
don't feel
I,
like you've
modules.
had just as much problems with trying to get the class path right and something's
I,
not building or not linking because you just forgot to include the thing in the class path or
right.
you were
I hear
pointing at a different
you.
version than the version you're changing the
I've
source code
never
of.
had that. I've never had that issue,
I
but I've
have,
only been using Java for 30 years. So
but always able to resolve it in a way that feels clean and safe. And the lock in the depths just always felt like some mess happened there, and I don't know what, and I can't get it sorted out in a reliable way.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that one of the standard guidance for my thing doesn't work, I don't know why, is delete your lock file and rebuild.
Um, there are plenty of people
Is
who screw up
suggestive of a problem.
how they build systems and then they blow it away and go again. Um, I'm seeing that in plenty of places, even recently. Uh,
Let's see how
yeah,
simple.
that
How
your
simple.
build system's messed. So I'm not trying to eat the whole solve the
Uh,
dependencies problem because that one's not a well understood solved problem.
But
So I'm
at
going to
least you're
limit the
thinking
grief.
some part what is a module means for simple.
Yeah. So for me, a module means I have a project root. I don't care if you call it a module root and you nest or not. There's some place to start from. Names are relative to that place. So A.B.C is relative to wherever I started the project at. And then there is a mirror of cached.o files. I'm saying it's in build, but whatever. In that mirror are the .o's that exactly have the same directory structure and have the same symbols, so I don't have to compile them all every time. But when I need a symbol, I'll look in the mirror and find the description of a previously compiled version or compile as needed.
But that would suggest that you need the source and the symbols to keep it, and the .o files to be in
If
sync
you hand me
constantly.
.o's without source and I go to the .o and I don't have the source, it's not out of date. I'll just take it as it is. And
Yes.
if you gave me a pile of .o's and you had a symbol and I look in the .o's and I don't find that symbol, you have a missing symbol. So you have to give a correct library somewhere that has the symbol. So, suppose sys doesn't have a gzip
Mhm.
in it. Somebody says sys.gzip. I'll go look in the sys place. I'll find a sys.o. I'll look for gzip. I'll miss. I'll keep looking at whatever other places I go look for things that say sys.gzip. I won't find anything. I'll say no. Actually, if it says sys.gzip, I'll stop at sys. Say no gzip and you're done. It fails.
So Cliff,
Mm.
do you have so you have a .o representation of a file? Do you have a representation of a library?
I was going to just say you're an archive, which is effectively a tar or gzip of .os.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm just leaning on old school tech that's been around forever and works.
I was
Now,
going
No,
to say, when you say
I wasn't
archive, you actually mean
denigrating it.
like
No,
the Linux R command.
right, I'm willing to make something a little more efficient by saying I'll take all the hash tables of symbols and all these .os that you're compressing to a WAD and move the unified hash table in someplace. So you don't have to pick the whole file apart to find all the hash tables to do lookup. That one makes sense to me. And that would be actually only useful if I'm intending on missing most of the time. You handed me a butt ton of libraries. They have all these things in them. Mostly no one ever looks at them. I don't want to load the 100 megabytes of library you gave me except sort of lazily. So you wanted just one thing out of the 100 megabyte library. I want to go to a unified place, find a hash table that has, 100,000 entries in it, but that's not 100 megabytes yet. find and get the one thing and go find the offset and then seek in the file and suck up the actual bits and that kind of thing. But so there's an efficiency thing for giant archives that want a unified hash lookup. But otherwise, yeah. Worst case scenario, I unpack your archive and I grab each.o in turn and grab his hash table in turn and do the lookups one after another. Now, once I've done them once during a compilation, they all get cached in a unified hash table in the simple process. So after you do one lookup in this library, the next one will, you know, hit in the hash table directly.
And it'll be a while before there's enough simple code on the planet for that to be a performance
That's where
problem.
I, exactly. No problem there. And I'm just like simple, old school, just to make life easy in theory. But I want to kind of see if I didn't screw anything up. Um, yeah,
Okay. I'm not sure I'm convinced for general languages that I think should really think about the dependency problem. But if you just want something that's simple, class path where you say, here's where to go find the symbols,
that's right.
like it
There
adds an
is
extra burden on the person who's doing the build, but they can
right.
usually hide that burden in a makefile.
I'm about to say that burden is typically picked up by build engineers the world over already, because most languages, not looking at you, Node, don't do that dependency directly. Instead, it went to the build side, and people have Gradle that says go to Maven, suck down the parts. Okay, fine. I can suck down the parts with make, Gradle, I don't care, but there's a build. It's outside the compiler, and it knows how to do things that are outside the source hierarchy. So the source hierarchy itself of the source code doesn't say go find on Maven the following thing. And then I'm kind of like, I think that's a reasonable language design choice.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember Python symbol search, which is I think it looks for a file by that name, and then it looks for lib slash a file by that name, and then goes back a directory and looks for a file of that name, and lib slash a file of that name, and then goes back a
Right,
directory and just
right. He
will
hunts for
walk
the
to the root of
project
your
root.
file system if it doesn't hit a project file.
Right. He's hunting for a project root by going up the hierarchy of directories
But
looking
looking
for hits.
looking for
Yeah,
a
except that he stops
library.
the first time he finds it. If he finds it on the
Yeah.
way to the project route, he's like, I don't need a project route anymore. I found what I'm looking for. I'm done.
Okay, wait, Cameron.
I was just going to say libraries as part of the source tree seems like a horrible. Again, I know
Yeah,
it's common in JavaScript, but
right.
it's a disaster.
I don't know.
So
Right.
libraries are either what you're building or um, or they're coming from somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And just being able to abstract that behind the repository concept just dramatically simplifies it because if you want to be able to pull them from some internet repository, then you have a configuration that says pull them from there, and then hopefully it has some offline mode so it doesn't pull them from there when you're on the plane. Cliff and me
My
agree
favorite
on this one.
complaint.
Right, but isn't that the lock file you were just saying you didn't like? Is the config file that says go pull it from there and keeps track of what's been pulled?
No, that's it's not in the directory with the source. It's in whatever you're using for a build.
Hmm.
And then that whatever you use it for build might have it in the directory, but it's responsibility of the build system, not responsibility of the source code, which means simple, the compiler doesn't look at whatever your build system does. Your build system tells simple. So I am willing to have simple do more than one compile. If he finds source and he has a build cache of .os and .class files, just replace simple with Java here and .class of .o. He'll go and go up to date on those pieces, but he won't go out to the internet. And then somebody else, the build system says, "Oh, you need these following things, and I'll hand them to you so you can go link against them or whatever, name bind, blah blah blah, whatever." But I'll hand them to the compiler, who will then take that as, God told me this is where this code is. Go get it. Um,
And if I ever run across an import that's like, go get this GitHub repository for a library that's not currently on the file system, it's just a build failure and says,
Yeah,
great,
yeah, it's a
go
build
tell your
failure.
build
Right.
system to resolve that.
So one of the things that comes
Compiler
around
won't
there
care.
is people have different rules on what version numbers they want when. I want to take a range of version numbers. Oh, you updated on Maven. It must be safe and good. It can't have been a bug just injected or a hack backdoor injected. I'll just take it and it'll be, on faith and run. And then some people are like, I will only take well curated versions that, that I've carefully checked that I believe don't have backdoors hacked into them, and I'll bump version numbers manually and slowly. And I don't, that's not the language design here. That for me, that's the build system.
Yeah. And that's
I want to,
arguably the most significant security flaw in the entirety of corporate software right at the moment is
well,
everybody depends on some tiny open source project that's in the heart of their trusted zone and is
yeah,
being updated automatically.
it's getting
Yeah,
updated automatically, and I'm not that person.
designed. None of the
And when
languages in
that
code
person's
are designed
company
to be
goes out of
persistent.
business and somebody else buys it and decides to update that domain name,
Yeah. Yes. Oh
how
God. All
many
right.
two-person companies do you think Microsoft has given access to the core of their cloud infrastructure? Because it's not zero.
Staying away, staying away. Cameron, you were saying something?
Yeah, I can't remember what I was saying.
Fine.
That was 30 seconds ago. I don't have that much memory.
Exactly. No, I think this is the crux of language design is what's not in the language.
Oh, yeah, actually, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say most languages are not built with security and developer processes in mind. So they're all afterthoughts that get glued on via tooling, most of which doesn't come from the people behind the language.
Do you
So,
think Java wasn't designed with developer processes in mind? Because
The developer
I feel like one
processes
of the
of that
biggest
era.
wins of GC in Java was that it simplified developer
Yeah, yeah. It,
processes.
it was the developer processes of that era were well thought out. 25 years later, the develop process has had new things added. Everyone runs to the internet to grab pre-cooked, pre-built shit that then gets updated by and somebody else they've never met in their life who injects backdoors in them. So that's the new developer process. The old ones still exist. People still use Java because there's no GC things. People still use C++ because they can cast void star to int to void star and make something like a JVM happen. Um, but
I mean,
yeah, but now
one of
everyone
the
says go get a library.
things that got me really excited when you were first describing AA was the lexical closures as a security level strong thing.
Yeah, I think that's still correct.
Because we live in a world now where I want to import code into my process that I barely trust.
Right.
And that's just the world that we live in now. So the
Cameron's
idea of, oh, you imported this thing, so it should be able to write to your hard drive? No. If I imported it and I handed it the file system object, it should write to the hard drive.
right.
If I imported it and I didn't hand it the file system hard drive, it should not be able to write to my hard drive.
I mean, that's one of the goals with Cameron's XTC is the hard sandboxing of everything, recursive nested sandboxing. But you should be able to pull in random crappy shit. And it can't say, I'm going to malabite megabytes of throwaway code of storage until you throw an out of memory and give you a denial of service attack by allocating until death. And,
Right, but to me, the value of all that is that it simplifies the developer process. Like,
yeah, yeah. And so, under the notion of there is a current world order of developer processes right now, and it has security problems to be worked on and discussed about. But there is this understanding that we will be going to third-party external internet places to grab code. And can't I put something in the language to make that easier? And the answer is yes, of course I could. And then in 25 years, should simple still be around, which, um, you know, new things will happen in the developer process, and people will look back on this one and say, like, yeah, what the hell? Fine. It was good. It was bad. It was a thing.
WebAssembly seems promising what it's doing with components and capabilities. which is exactly the thing that you can import a dependency, but it doesn't mean you give the dependency the access to a file system or something like that.
Yeah.
You have to explicitly give the capability.
Yeah.
And in WebAssembly, it really makes sense because that is pretty much running arbitrary remote code execution on anyone's laptops.
Yeah. And right now, the way I've set myself up here, IO comes from the sys object, but I could certainly put the IO in a you got it passed into you at main,
So
and then you
what is
had
a
to pass it
module?
along.
What is a module for simple?
What is a module for simple?
Yep.
Then we talked about it. What is it you're confused?
So because it's if we follow the export the external C stuff, a
Yeah.
module a module is a struct for that.
The-
The struct sys is a module. The struct IO is also a module because it contains
well, right now, IO is not, it's just a member of sys
it's
as a
but in
namespace. Modules
okay.
are limited to files structures somehow. They're tied to file structures, directory structures.
There has to be referred to there has to find source dot simple
He has
always.
to find a .o. He either finds source or finds a
Oh,
.o. If he
okay, fine, fine.
finds source, he'll make a .o. If he
Hmm.
doesn't find the source, but he does find a .o, the .o has to be valid as it stands.
But why do we need that distinction? Because we don't have a packages, we don't have imports of source here. We're trying to avoid that. Why do we need the distinction of model at all? Because if we have some mechanism, all right, find the root, search what it's looking for. If it find it, then fine. If it's not find it, then delay to the one comment about that. You are potentially delaying every compilation, every symbol resolution to the end of the compilation because it has to parse all the files in order to find what it's looking for. So it's a possible delay to the
Okay, but
to
you
this.
get two different things here.
Okay,
The
which
forward referencing within a file is a straightforward, cheap thing to do. I just
okay,
throw down a C of
forward
nodes node that
referencing
says I'm a forward reference.
and continue. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if what you are calling depends, it has to be resolved. So why, if you depend on that forward reference later, in order to find the type, in order to find how.
When I get to the end and I have, it's not even true. When I come to a name that has an obvious namespace on it, I
Mhm,
go look for a .o to find it. I go to what Cameron calls the repository and say, give me the .o. From the compiler's point of view, that is a search path of module roots or project roots,
mm,
and he goes and finds the build mirror and then sees if he can extract a file of the correct namespace and then assemble out of that file.
yeah. So at this point, at least to me, it seems that Mojo is more of a concept to the compiler because it doesn't materialize. It doesn't have a package name. You don't have a package keyword or something like
Yeah,
that.
I don't, right. I don't, the module is me being very loosey-goosey with the term because it means different things to
Yeah.
different people anyhow. I
Yes.
really have what I was calling a project as a module. I don't do nested modules the way Cameron does.
Mm,
I say there's a project that has a tree of files. Within this tree, people can find each other by just giving a short name and I'll do the hunt.
mhm,
There is a forest of trees given at the command line to the compiler where it says, I'm on this project with a file into this guy, but here's another project that has maybe just the build parts of libc or sys, and here's a
mhm,
project that has gzip, and here's a project that has whatever other thing I grabbed on the internet,
mhm.
and then I'll hunt them in order and find your symbol.
Okay.
But within a directory tree, you don't have to say anything about it. I'll just find the
Yeah.
things.
So there it is. So a module is a directory. That's it.
Yeah, at the moment, a module will be a directory of files. Yeah.
That's it.
So
That is
if
a module.
I'm in main.simple,
Yeah.
what do I have to type to call a class that is found inside B?
So assuming that B is in the current directory as main, And the requirement will be that main, if it's the actual main, will have to be in, no, that's not right. Yeah, so you call from main. No, he would look in the current directory because you didn't put any namespace on B. So he'll look for a B.simple. And then he'll look first actually in build slash B.o. If that doesn't exist, he'll look for project root B.simple and then
So I
make
just
it
type
B.o.
a dot b dot class name.
Mhm.
Yeah, not even, yes. You have to start from the project root. And then there's easy ways to get short names for long strings. So, but the fully qualified name works. Fully qualified name, a.b.c.foo. That
Yeah.
works.
So I don't have to
So
go
what?
through sys or import or
No, no, anything within your own project, fully qualified name works. And then there's shortcuts to make shorter versions of fully qualified names.
So we do the same exact thing, Cliff. Our nested modules are different, so ignore that for a minute. But if you're within a package, a.b.c and you say D, it'll look first where you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it'll go up to your parent and say, well, does he have a D? And does he have a, and it keeps going up until it finds someone who contains a D, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what it means is a fully qualified just means it walks all the way up and then starts coming back down following the fully qualified path.
but in your
Follow?
case, you can't force it to start at a project root because things have limited visibility into their parents.
But in your case being Cameron's case or Cliff's case?
No, because within a
Cameron's case.
module, sorry, no, because within a module,
Aren't-
you have full visibility to everything in that module. So we have no security against anything else in the same module.
But you
But if
don't
I,
have visibility into your parents.
of course you do.
Yeah, he just said he did. Yeah, I
Of course
hunt
you do.
here, then I hunt up, and I hunt up, and I hunt up.
Yeah. And in fact, for us, we don't even try to defend like private or whatever, because it's not a security feature. It's an organizational feature. It's a name hiding, not data hiding feature, if you will. It's not a security feature. It's a naming feature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which solves the serialization problem, for example, because if you need to serialize something that's in your module, you have access to all its private parts. In a C++ sense, everyone in your module is your friend.
Yeah. And
Or as
that's actually how
the
it
old
is.
C++ saying goes, a friend is someone you show your private parts to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't make that up, but if you want to give me credit for it, it's so brilliant, I'll take the credit.
Yes. So we're all friends here inside a
Oh,
module.
inside a module, yes.
I actually
Inside
was thinking, well, no, let me private for namespace inside a module. Yeah, right.
inside a inside a coffee compiler module.
You
We're all
can't,
friends.
I have private public notions and you can't see the privates by default,
Right.
but I don't have any issues with you finding your private parts with some other way that says, I know
Right.
it's private, but let me see
So
it.
the names don't resolve by default
Yeah,
because they're private, because
yeah.
so they're not propagated automatically. But so for example, in our case at runtime, you simply say, show me the struct for that, give me the struct
Oh,
for
you
that
have the name
object.
change from it's a ecstasy module object, whatever, to it's a struct version, which is basically a
Right.
flat C thing with no privacy.
Right, exactly. So every object has a separate, it's not a
View.
real object, but it has a separate object called its struct, right? And that's its fields. So the object has properties and the struct has fields.
Yeah. Okay.
And not every property has a field.
Yeah. I'm not going to go there directly, but the easy way to get at privates is something I'll have to think about. I don't have it right now. They just don't show up in the search. Um, but I think it's correct. I think we've done is correct. They're a namespace feature. They're not a security feature. When you cross over to a different module, you cannot ask for, or a different project for my terminology. I don't know what you would call this, a module project, different directory of head of things. You won't be able to reflect your way to seeing other private parts.
Yeah,
Okay.
and for us, the security boundary is the container boundary.
Yeah.
So you form a type system. So really it's within that type system, whatever modules are introduced in that type system are friends. And then if you
if you're worried about something, you create a container and run it in the container. And then it's in its own little universe.
Right.
And it has no access to you unless you pass that access in.
Yeah, I wasn't going to quite that aggressive with simple, but
No,
just
there's no reason.
philosophy for
It's a different set of goals.
yeah, right. As a philosophy for a modern language, I think that's very good. I like it.
I'm pretty committed to it.
Yeah, at this point you are.
So
Fine.
what do you do when you find folders and files whose names don't follow the symbol rules for your language?
Oh, I'll probably give you some polite error message. The easy one is to say I failed to look up. And you're like, but wait, it's right there. And I'll say, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see this.
Right. So
Yeah, I
if you
guess that's
follow
true.
the
Any file or folder that exists but doesn't get looked up, you don't care.
Yeah,
that's
right.
right.
So if there happens to be a file in your file system that's named
How
weird
about,
Windows allowed string that's not actually
well,
Unicode,
And
Emacs puts a,
how many tools sprinkle
like,
shit into your
yeah, I was
source
about to say
code? Like,
Emacs and VI sprinkle dot backups or dot twiddle
right.
old versions all over the place.
right. So the issue is that when somebody's typing a symbol, they're typing valid symbol dot valid symbol dot valid symbol, and
Yeah,
those files can exist, but who cares if there's also files that don't?
that don't match.
Those are
That's right.
just files that don't match.
And
That's
the
right.
other thing to remember is that, like in Ecstasy, for example, those other files could be resources that you're using. So you could have templates that you're using to generate HTML files, or you might have
Images.
JavaScript files or images. And they could, we don't suggest it, but they could be in the same directory as the source. We suggest having a separate resource directory. But by default, we assume that the root of the source for the module is also the root for the resources for the module.
Right. And that can be nice. If I'm using protobufs, just sticking the .proto file right there next to the
Right
source
next to you.
code.
Yeah, that would make sense to me.
Yeah.
And then somewhere you should be a shortcut that says, go open this file in the current source directory at runtime, except that since it's source code, I'll just cache it. And now it's moved into the jar file or the zip
Right.
of the resource.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we actually move it into the constant pool of the compiled module.
Yeah.
So we can move an entire directory, an entire file system, or just individual files into the
Yeah.
constant pool. So at runtime, you just say, hey, give me that directory. And even though it hasn't, like it comes out of your file system comes out of part of your constant pool,
Right.
but it acts just like your C drive if you're on Windows or whatever,
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
except it's read only.
I can make a version like that. But yeah, right. So this would be like and actually for a ahead of time compile that show up in your exe or your .o file is in the read only directory section. And here is your resources just straightly available.
But I will say there are big trade-offs for doing that, and I'll list a few just so you guys can think about it. Particularly when you're crossing language and toolchain barriers. So, for example, Node has its own opinion about how it gets deployed. In fact, it has 7 different opinions, all of which are incompatible with each other for how it gets deployed, right?
Right.
And so if you're trying to bundle it up as a static resource and ship it as part of another language's module like Ecstasy, there is a conflict in the tool chains. It works fine, but it breaks a lot of the assumptions of how people develop with Node, for example.
Hmm.
So it's not so any of these decisions, even if they seem, useful and clever in the abstract, when you actually move them into the real world, there are frictions that appear that we didn't expect that.
Well, that's because you're using Node. Don't do that.
That's a good point. I'll take that under advisement.
Yeah, but I have found tools like that useful where you're like, here is my import that is import file as constant bytes.
Right.
Exactly.
Now, when you
Because
build
in
your build artifact, there's a symbol that refers to a byte array.
because in Java it's so excruciating. It's like, okay, I have this file. It's got the bytes I want, and it's sitting right here next to my Java file. And to get it into my program, I have to first of all make my build included in the
Yeah.
in the right place.
It's not a Java thing at all. You have to go to your build
Exactly.
system.
And then I have to open the file. Then I have to read the bytes. And
Yeah.
so it's like and yeah, it's just
But import file as bytes and import file as string.
Right.
right.
Yeah.
We have those two.
Now I
Both
have a
those are-
folder. It's called SQL queries, and it's got all the SQL queries in it, and I just
Right.
import as string them all, and it's fine.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't have that yet, but that's a thing. That's the right answer.
Yeah.
Certainly, if
I
you
don't know
say,
if simple needs that, but I would certainly argue it for AA.
oh, I think it should for simple too, and definitely for AA. But AA, one of the goals. That's one. Yeah, one of the goals is to do some execution at compile time of random shit. Um, that would be a use of that would be to eval and get a byte array out of it at compile time. Oh, I have
I
to
mean,
eval.
even things like compiling your regexes at compile time can
Yeah,
have
it's like
surprising
compiling, right?
performance
Yeah,
impacts.
it's not quite the same.
The other thing
Yeah.
to explain clearly up front is the meaning of the word import, because as Aaron has alluded to a few times in the conversation, it's fairly overloaded in the industry, right? So like in Java, we were talking about how it's just a name registry. You import XYZ as Z, it puts it in a map, Z equals X dot Y dot Z, right? In Python, in JavaScript, import is like, actually go get that thing and process it, like,
Yeah, and Python
uh,
import means eval.
right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, so you kind of have three different activities if you stop and think about it. One is go get this thing from the repository, whatever the hell that is in your language, right? Two is know it by this name. And three is evaluate it. And those are like three different things that, may or may not be desirable in a particular context.
But for import.h means only give me the name, no, the rest of the machinery. I just want the name and the type, so I can use it in my program.
In Java, that's the way it works, yeah.
That's what
But in
Java.
C, include actually means process it as text in the compiler.
Which
Yeah, it's a
leads to issues.
preprocess and append to the output in the input of the compiler.
Say that
I
again?
mean, Google's got some famous horror
It's
stories from include statements of we were
in
compiling 10 gig of code, but we read 3 terabytes of data off disk.
Yep.
Python
include.
has this exciting feature in import. We can run code as import, so import can have side effect in Python running arbitrary code.
That I knew.
Awesome
That's
feature.
okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. If AA does eval for imports, that'll be the same issue.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's how Lisp works, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, don't have files called whatever little Bobby tables, drop tables. The XKCD.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, my file name
Yeah, I
is
do think
open
when I finally
curly
learned
import
Lisp that I
all
understood
remove
Python
star.
better.
Sorry.
It's certainly one of the inspirations, I think.
All right. Maybe we're winding down.
Python's performance was
Gonna add
inspired by
anything
Lisp.
else?
Yeah, I'll add one thing. So this wasn't immediately obvious to us when we started, but when we added it in, it turned out to be, for our use case, turned out to be like a perfect solution. So the idea of bringing in some foreign module into my namespace. So foreign module, not some name that already exists in my namespace, but like sys in your example.
Yeah.
So our sys is called ecstasy. The long name is ecstasy.xtclang.org, right?
Right.
And it's automatically mounted into every module as ecstasy. So that solves your sys problem because of the automatic nature of it. But the interesting thing is that because ecstasy is a module, ecstasy is mounted into ecstasy.
Oh, sure.
So ecstasy is a module that contains a package called ecstasy that imports the module ecstasy.
Yeah.
It's in other words, it self injects in the
In other words, there's something called ecstasy.text.string, but there's also something called
Yeah.
ecstasy.ecstasy.ecstasy.text.string, and it turns out to be the same class because when we resolve the type system, there's only one module, ecstasy.xtclang.org.
That
Right?
sounds to me
It's
like
just it's just known
It,
by any number of names.
I don't see why that's a problem.
It's not a problem at all. It means, yeah, it means there's kind of a uniformity of how you refer to things. Anyway,
This gets to the question of how does simple compile the sys module?
right, exactly.
Right. And the answer is I will go look for symbols in the sys module if I were to not find them in the current source code.
Right. And
And
since you're compiling sys, you'll find them.
I'll find them. That's correct. So I'll
Bingo.
never do that lookup. So I'll never ask the question, hey, where is sys.o?
Right. But if you do look it up, you'll go to your repository, which the way we did this is that our build repository is a temporary repository that the compiler creates that reads through to some underlying repository. And the modules that it's compiling occupy a namespace in that topmost layer. So that when I go to read through, I always find the modules that I'm compiling. So I never go to the disk.
Ah, yes.
So if two different functions in the sys module mutually recursively refer to each other,
Yes. That's
as you're
allowed.
building, the first one will just get declared a forward reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Within the
second
same
Exactly.
one will
file,
loop
that's all
back.
it's all free.
Once you finish, the forward reference will get resolved.
In forward
So as long as you
references,
don't actually have infinite recursion, you're fine.
right. Forward references get resolved stupidly easy. They're just given an unknown bottom type, and the when the name shows up, I patch them in. So everyone who uses them realizes it's an error to use it, but that also doesn't break them. They just like, I just did a load from the bottom type. Okay, so I'm an error state because I don't know what my. But when I find the matching guy, I just turn it into an identity function, and the graph like peoples itself away, and it becomes correctly stitched
Right.
together. And then
And
the
languages
constant.
that are executing top down can get into trouble where you
Oh,
call a
yes.
not yet defined forward reference, but you don't
But
actually run any code until you're done compiling, so you shouldn't have that problem.
Yeah, although, well, yeah, yeah. It would be right. When I come to something in the compilation process, I'll go hunt it up. Yeah, nothing's executing here.
right.
I'm
But
trying to think when.
if you are executing on import, though, you can definitely have issues with circular references.
Yes. And I was trying to think of what the right answer there was. No, if you were executing, you came to an unknown forward ref that had to get loaded before you could proceed with the execution. There has to be a loading process that doesn't actually depend on that.
Right. You end up needing a dereferenced, undefined forward reference runtime error, which is like, fine.
What I did allow is that you could come up with an unknown name that's a function, and as long as you don't execute it, you just carry along, you're all fine. And then if the function gets defined before you actually execute it, then no one cares. No, no, no. So that was AA doing things. The function names come around, and yeah, I'll come up with what it is in a minute.
Which
Just don't
can be
execute
nice for
it.
coding around operating system differences.
Yeah, that was the if well, yeah, should be same for simple here. If this at runtime versus that at
Yeah.
runtime, and I just have it
If
collapse
OS
them.
is OSA, define the symbol this way. If OS
Yeah,
is OSB, define the symbol that way.
yeah, yeah.
And the dead ones are dead, so who
And
cares
the
that they're
dead ones are dead. No, no one
nonsense?
cares. Yeah, I wasn't doing. I might do the thing. That's a funny language choice. I've had people complain about it before. The dead code does not type, and
Right.
should you complain or not complain, it turns into some philosophical issue. I can certainly make like tiny, small, obvious test cases where you either want to fail or not fail at parse time or compile time as a type error, or declare it's okay and it
So
feels
I'm
very
curious,
arbitrary.
what is your example best argument for dead code should type?
The best one is the OS one. Let's see, I was
No, that's
working
dead
through
code
this
shouldn't
thing
type.
here.
The dead code should type because it won't be outdated. It will be
Well, you want to be able to compile it on Mac and know that it's broken on Linux, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. And it will find that it's up to date or not.
C++
So
solves this with if const expert, where you just choose which one you want it to be.
yeah, that's what we're talking about. You don't have to declare it const expert, it's just have to be const. So it is a const expert and therefore it collapses. So this is a case here where I say, you know, any program, any Python on the planet will never fail here. Should a compiler throw a div by error on this code, div by zero on this code? It's obviously going to divide by zero. Code is also obviously dead. Should the language error you out? The compiler error you out? I change this to a true. Now you must fail. Should I just error you out or let it go? Eh. How about, this? Here, any amount of trivial analysis will say it must fail. Should the parser blow you out or the type system blow you out? Say it'll fail. So replace this failure with null pointer exceptions. And then, the other one for the OS is different calls. So this is if Windows, and then I say whatever, open file, comma, R, comma, Windows special, else if, Mac, open, file, comma, R, comma, whatever, the resource fork, whatever. And they're all different types or different argument counts. I can't type today. Else if Linux. Okay, so when do you declare, like, these are all statically known at the time they're compiled on a particular platform? When do you declare the type? And that was sort of my philosophy is, oh, okay, just do it like normal text, normal program code, and constant fold at compile time. And if I'm compiling on Windows, the Mac piece goes dead, and then I don't care. So you asked, but that's my current best guess. I haven't coded in Anchor here. I don't know, but this seems reasonable. And watching something like this go around at Modular for doing different layouts for things from different GPUs. They do a lot of things for which they get they guess they don't do syntax errors, but they do a lot of code that they know is going to be dead at compile time, and that just because the what you do for layout on an NVIDIA versus an AMD are different, but they want to have some higher level picture that involves them all.
Yeah, my instinct is to say dead code doesn't matter, and if you want to make sure that your code doesn't get out of date on Windows and Mac and Linux, then your test suite needs to cover
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you need to test on them all. Well, as soon as you test on them all, you'll find you'll find the errors in the dead code that's now live. Yep.
Well, the problem is that this testing has combinatorial complexity because you can have a version of a version of a version. It's the problem with C preprocessor. There has been papers that basically found that less than 1% of the preprocessor if-def combinations are tested in large open source software because the if-defs can be combined. So you can have if-def A, and then under that you have if-def B. And now you have to test A true, A false, B true, B false, all of the combinations.
You know,
People don't do that.
it looks like some other problem in computer science. It reminds me of some problem where you have to try
All
all
possible
the
interleavings.
Boolean. Yeah,
Yeah.
what problem could that be?
Yep.
You could also just build all of your targets at the same time by default, which is what I was thinking of doing for mine. Like you define your targets in
Oh,
your
but
build
Matt said
file.
something different. Here I have three targets. Matt said, I also have a version that does X or Y on a statically known constant thing, and so it'll constant fold at compile time for A versus B. And I have
Oh
another
yeah.
one for C.
Inside open function, you can have if debug. And then now you have the debug and release version for the open for every operating system. So now you suddenly have to multiply the combinations.
Yeah.
Okay, let me clarify. When I say target, I use that to like talk about like a architecture. I call the
Yeah.
different like maybe
Right.
what you're calling a target, I would call an output. But
Right.
like each different architecture, like you just build all of them.
Yeah,
That's
you,
kind
you
of the
said
way.
build the three, but then
Yeah,
there's
so
a
you have to
debug.
build Windows x86, Windows x86 64, Windows ARM 64,
Yeah.
Yep. And
PowerPC or whatever it is now.
And
Well,
debug of each.
as soon as I say limit of
Debug and
machines,
release for each, yes.
Yeah.
And then all of the RISC-V extensions, which I'm not going to list because we probably don't have a few hours remaining on the call.
right.
yeah,
Yeah, basically, if each if def in the code, you have to build with every single possible option for, and you have to do those all as a giant table. So each if def you add adds not one more build, it adds one more dimension
Yes,
of
it adds the
builds.
dimensions where it gets bad.
Yeah,
Product types.
it's combinatorial.
Right. There's asserts.
well,
Asserts
mine.
are on or off. That's one more dimension. Right. Followed by, yes, whatever other combinatorial things you have to do.
So I mean, you don't have to test all the combinations. Like what I'm doing in mine is like, okay, I define a finite number of targets, and then when
Yeah.
you build, it's going to build every like target at the same time. Like if you're on Windows, it would still build like the Linux and Mac targets as
Okay.
well.
So let's clarify. You're making a choice of which combinations you're going to build, and that's a fine choice. Other people have different choices. I've listed two dimensions where one dimension has 50 machines and the other dimension has two, but I could add a bunch more dimensions and the exponential count will go up into the thousands to the millions, and you can't possibly have time in the universe to compile all flavors. So you pick some subset. But this is a known thing forever and a day. I don't think it actually, I don't think it actually changes anything. The fact that it's folded at compile time or not doesn't, in my head, change anything. You still have all those combos. If you're just doing them at runtime, you still have to take the execution paths that test all the versions. So I think it's the same problem.
Well, my thought on this would just be that you're building whatever paths you're building, right? Like if there's a combination that's never used and never built, then why do you need to test it?
Yeah, I mean, what Cliff is saying is your choice is reasonable, but it is not the only choice.
Not the only choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So the way we do it is for each if def, we basically, and this isn't done yet, so I'm describing something that's designed but not in. The compiler actually internally carries a state of both choices. And then when it writes out the IR contains both choices. So that at link time, based on the link time parameters, we actually evaluate, if you will, we run our C preprocessor at link time, not at compile time.
Oh, yeah, right.
So for example, if I have code that says, if test, then it's only going, if test is defined, that code is always shipped, but it's not always running.
Right.
So if you have so basically you can at least test the compile logic at compile time because it'll compile every combination.
Yeah, but
Actually,
that gets exponential. Okay, I see.
Of
That
course
that's
it
just
gets
like
exponential. That's exactly what it does. And here's the question. Would you rather the computer do the exponential work or would you rather do it by hand?
well, I'm claiming at some point the exponential blows out your computer as well.
That's right. And that's why we can kill any running software.
So
That's one of
at
the
some point
reasons.
you'll agree that you can't compile them all and you'll have to pick and choose, but just not yet.
Got to catch them all.
All right.
Maybe you can kind of do what Mojo does for its templates. Like it has this pre-elaboration optimization phase in like parameter domain IR. Then it goes for parameter domain IR, and then it does elaboration, which is similar to template instantiation. So the point is that you have higher level IRs before you do something like template instantiation, as
Yeah.
opposed to stamping out those copies immediately by monomorphization. So you don't have to monomorphize immediately. You can still have IRs where you do something like type checking some analysis on the generic version of the code, where generic here means you don't expand. Although in practice you would still have challenges because something like Windows Special, how do you even define what it means if you are compiling on Linux? Maybe you need Windows specific headers, and now do you have copyright to include Windows specific headers? Maybe you don't, because maybe those come with Windows. Do you have to write stubs for every single header that comes from every single vendor? It becomes more and more complicated too.
I would claim on the wrong vendor, you ought to be able to get away with treating it as essentially a void or a void star, an object, and then just agree that you're never going to touch it. The compiler passes over it, it's syntactically correct, but you're not ever going to run that because you're on a Linux. Like for me on doing this on AA, it has to pass the syntax. But other than that, I don't care what value it is. It can be an undefined forward reference, that's fine.
Yeah, this was one thing that I wanted to do was like say, hey, if you have the source code, that's the complete source code, and there's no like hidden system headers. If you want to use, headers that are non-portable, you have to throw them into your source code, and you have to be aware of the fact that you're using some kind of like copyrighted vendor-specific thing that you can't portably, bring between systems.
So this piece I'm doing here is I'm basically writing the name bindings for my sys guy that would be different bindings for Windows versus Mac versus Linux. So I'm not expecting an end user to try and deal with having headers from other things. But I guess if somebody was trying to do, I have a, machine learning lib that I'm running on this versus that, and I need to pull in NVIDIA's headers versus AMD's headers, you had to sort that issue. All right, I have things to actually do at lunch. I'm trying to help my son-in-law find a car. I got jobs, I got errands to run. So I'm going to call it. Thank you, everybody. And see everybody. Whoops, stop share here. See everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Yeah.